Also to a number of staff members, welcome to the first meeting of the Western District Council for 2022. It's going to be an interesting few months for us on the Western District Council as we all negotiate this strange world we're in, and I wonder when we'll be meeting together next in council chambers. Hopefully that's not too far away. But welcome to the meeting, and I look forward to your participation in due course. And our commiserations, of course, to the Mayor, who's slightly incapacitated and won't be chairing the meeting today. Bruce, welcome, and hopefully you start to get better pretty soon. Jane, Councillor Neil has agreed to provide the karakia for our meeting today. So Jane, would you proceed, please?
David. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Seize the winds from the west, seize the winds from the south. Kia makinakina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai. Let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. E he aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, te hai mori ora. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. Behold, 'tis the breath of life. Ngā mihi.
Very appropriate for today. Thanks, Councillor. Do we have any apologies, please? Okay, no apologies. The declarations are being treated in the way they normally are. They're on Microsoft Teams, and so please make certain that your details are up to date for those declarations, please. Any urgent matters not on the agenda that need to be considered by Council today?
Just a point of note, Chair, is the inclusion of Western Holdings update, which was unfortunately missed off the original agenda. It was meant to be on, so we've included them today.
Thank you, Simon, and that's going to precede our discussion on the funding matter for Western Holdings. All right. Thank you very much. No urgent items other than that. Now come to the minutes of the previous meetings. Again, these have all been circulated and are available on Microsoft Teams. So we're dealing with the ordinary council meetings of the 9th of December last year, and also the extraordinary council meeting minutes of that same date. So I shall move and resolve that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 9th of December 2021 and the extraordinary council meeting held on 21st of December 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record of that meeting. Would someone second that, please? Councillor Neil, thank you. All those in favour, please wave your hands. Thank you very much. I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed ordinary council meeting minutes of the 9th of December 2021 and the extraordinary council meeting minutes held on the 21st of December 2021. Item 6 on the agenda, Simon, action list. Go for it.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors, and thank you, Chair. I'll take you through these items one by one and take questions at the end. Canary School Student Cycleway. This is the proposed crossing for the Canary School. I'm pleased to announce that work has actually started on the intersection as of today. Henry Adams has been subcontracted by Westroads to do that work. So anticipation all that work will be completed by the end of March. So that's a very positive outcome. Speed limit review. You have a document today requesting that council go out for submissions or requests for feedback on other roads within Western District, and that will come to council for consideration for further consultation. Ross Chinese Gardens. So we have received our resource consent and we have also engaged with the community in terms of the diversion of the creek. Can't remember what the title of the creek is. We have Jones Creek. We have assigned one of our project managers to oversee their work on behalf of council, and things are progressing in that space. Kumara Gardens, suggested this one is actually removed. The community have received support from council to get the tender document completed. The community is now reviewing the tenders and expect that they will come back to council in due course. Revel Street Trial. So we have a full report, including full costings, to come to council in March, which will be the end of the trial period. Old Christchurch Road, seal extension, that final costings being considered and getting drafted up with West Roads. The transportation manager is leading that work, and we'll come back to council to determine whether there's funding available within the current budget to complete that work. Investigation in terms of the headquarters and Pakiwaitara building regarding its current status, and the due diligence around the best options for us going forward in terms of upgrades. We're planning to bring a report back to council in March. So that work has been contracted and it's made some progress, and we've got some drafts to review next week. That's the point 8 is the same above. Road maintenance action updates. Parking presentation was delivered to council on the 25th, so that work will be undertaken within the annual plan process. Railway Terrace, we already have a resolution of council to change that Railway Terrace road traffic process. Speed limit review is in front of council today. And the footpath program was presented only a few weeks ago at the Capital Projects and Tenders Committee. And we expect that their work has been approved to start and costings received from West Roads, and that work will be starting in March. Standing committee members lists. Oh, before I move on to that one, I would like to use this forum for both Councillor Kogan and Councillor Martin to update us on their discussions with NZTA. So we'll leave that to the end if that's okay, councillors. Our standing committee members list that's been completed, and resource consent correspondence in regards to a certain resource consent is held in confidential meeting in this forum on today's meeting agenda.
Thank you, Simon. Any councillors have any issues to raise about any of those matters? Okay, do we need a motion receiving that list, Simon?
Yes, we do, in the run sheets.
Someone like to, yes, someone like to move that the action list from the Chief Executive be received. Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Davidson. All those in favour, wave their hands, please. Thank you. We have no presentations. Simon, just on the presentations issue, we've been meaning to have Mark Davies from DOC present to council for some long time, about a year, I think.
He's booked in for March.
He's down for March, is he?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item 8 in the agenda, staff reports. First one is an application by the Kumara Junction community, a request for access to $100,000 in reserve funds. Are they presenting or coming on this?
Yes, they are presenting. Fiona's taking the lead in terms of the report, just waiting for them to join. They're not.
So just while we wait for them to join, I might just give a quick clarification. In my report, I had referred to the funding being used for stage 1, which was the access track through the private lands down to Serpentine Beach. What I'd misinterpreted at the time was that they have actually succeeded in achieving that, what they're requesting the funding for is stage 2, which is the upgrade of the Gentilwani track, which will link on to that new access that they've put in.
So stage 1 was completed without any contributions. They did it through volunteer work.
So do you know, Fiona, whether the $100,000 will be sufficient to complete that part of the work? That's the Gentilwani track. Is being quoted, or any work being quoted, or is it an estimate?
Yeah, so they've spoken to several contractors to get this. It's an estimate. They're struggling to get a quote locked in because of prices changing so quickly at the moment. What they do have going for them is that this is an existing track, so it's an upgrade. So any, I guess, any funding that they do get and any work that they do to that track is an improvement from where it's at the moment. But they do believe that it can be done for that price.
And can you tell us what the issue is, what the ongoing maintenance of these tracks is going to involve in terms of council?
I think we're going to have to ask the community group that they've staged it out, so they should have the answers to that. Unfortunately, I don't right now.
Yeah, so with any upgrade or any community projects now, we also use an MOU in terms of understanding all those details. So that'll be part of that process with the funding.
Is that an issue for us, though, Simon, in terms of community groups can come and go, can't they? And are we down the track going to be left with a liability here?
Really depends on the commitment in terms of what the statement in the MOU actually refers to. If the structures themselves are the biggest risk to council more than anything else, we've got 2 structures, which are 2 small bridges to be built, very similar to what Doc had there in the first place. So most of this can be done by volunteer support. I don't see it a major risk.
Okay. Fiona, what's happening? Where are we at with the representatives of the community coming on the live stream?
They were timed to come on at 1:15. We've just sped through the first part of the meeting, so they will be here any moment. Can
I suggest that we do wait until they arrive? I see a lot of hands up, councillors, and probably some of them will be better targeted at them unless there's questions directly for council staff.
Yeah. Jane?
My question relates directly to Fiona, really. Do we know how many reserve or the amount of reserves contributions that have come from that subdivision?
I don't have that figure off the top of my head. I did calculate it at one point in time, but basically the contribution is a $3,000 contribution per residential allotment developed. So we know there are a lot of residential allotments have been developed in that area.
Yeah, so it would probably come out fairly even, give or take.
Councillor Kogan?
Thank you.
How much is currently in the endowment fund at the moment?
This is separate to the endowment fund. This is the recreation fund, the reserves fund. I don't have that figure. I'd have to check with finance on that because it gets used for different purposes. It gets contributed for different purposes and used for different purposes. So we'd have to equate out the ins and outs to get the exact figure for now.
That's probably, I mean, that's relevant to us though around, because they're asking for a considerable amount with 100,000, like, I mean, have we got 120,000 in the account?
Bear in mind, councillors, that Kumara Junction have received no funding from this reserve, and they have put a considerable amount in. If you recall that Leslie put a paper together late last year in terms of the consolidation of the reserves fund, and a lot of areas, particularly Hokitika, have been overrepresented in terms of withdrawing from that fund. Leslie, do you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. We're talking about the Reserve Development Fund, and it is funded through contributions, and from those community rating districts that we use for rating, and we account for that in our accounts so that we know how much is available for each community rated area. And before Fiona wrote this report, I did check that fund to ensure that we did have the 100,000, and it was just over 100,000 that we have that is available to Kumara and Kumara Junction.
Paul?
Thank you. Yeah, I do like the fact that that these people are helping themselves. That's great. I just wondered if the staff could explain from the report 8.1.5 and 8.1.6 regarding that funding.
Welcome, Francois, by the way. The minutes could record that Francois Timohoe has now joined the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm late.
That's fine.
So just to clarify those comments, so I guess what was being referred to there is that this is still a contestable fund, even though it's allowed for each of the communities that it's been gathered from. So if it's used for this purpose, if somebody came along with another project, then the funding wouldn't be there for it. So it was just to compare that it is contestable. This is what they're asking for, but if it's withdrawn for that purpose, that money is no longer available for another purpose.
Can I ask you, once you've asked the question, take your hands down just to know that, unless you want to ask a second question.
Which, which just begs the question again from Councillor Cogan as to how much is it actually in that fund?
I believe there's enough reserves to cover this project.
There are definitely enough to cover this project. I believe Leslie just said there were just over 100,000.
That's correct. It was around about, I think about 108 or something in that fund for the community in that area. There are more funds in that that actual reserve than this 100,000. A lot of it is actually already committed through annual reports, annual plans and LTP. But we've been keeping a check and a reconciliation on where the funding's coming from and where we can actually spend that funding. As we say, this 100,000 is purely and simply for the Kumara area, so Kumara and Kumara Junction itself, as that's all one rating district. But there are other funds. It's contestable for each community zone to be able to put projects forward for funding that is available in that area where those contributions have already come from.
Fiona, it's now, sorry, Di, it's now, or so Fiona, is it 2 minutes after the time for the people to join us?
David, can you see the other hands raised? Have you changed to the right group? So we have 4 hands up.
I can't see anyone's hands up.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing from the community group re this project. I just question in the staff report under 7, significance and engagement, that no public consultation is considered necessary. So is there no requirement to undertake any consultation in relation to releasing funds from this reserve?
No, because it's been gathered specifically for this purpose.
So I'm not suggesting there is another project, but for example, if there was a group in Hokitika that put forward a project, and another group could say, rightly so, say, well, I wasn't aware that that was the process. There was no public engagement on how that X amount of money was spent. I gather this has got wide community support in that area. I'm just clarifying process here because only last year we were considering other allocations out of this fund, and it did have to go through, the year before, an annual plan and a special consultative procedure actually for one of them.
as Leslie alluded to, the purpose that the contributions have been gathered is for the area that has been developed and have paid the contributions in the first place. In the past, when that has gone to full consultation, that has been when it's an overspend outside of the area. So in this case, this area has generated its own contributions that we're looking at staying within. In the case of the Hokitika proposed spend, that was more than what was gathered in the Hokitika area, so that there was accessing the entire fund, I guess you look at it if you put it into boxes. I hope that explains it. Leslie might be able to explain it better.
That's the way I see it, yes, exactly. That's why we brought that to council last time, because Hokitika had overspent by, I think it was near enough $1 million. So we did have to bring that to council separately.
Councillor Hart.
Simon, I'm not seeing hands on screens. Anyone tell me why I'm not?
Are you be able to scroll down and see all participants?
The number of participants, yeah.
No, everyone's video. Can you see everyone on your video screen?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yep.
I'll
Right.
help. Would you like me to help you, Chair Disson?
If you can tell me if there's someone who's got their hand up, I'm not seeing any hands on my screens at all, Simon.
Okay, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, I just have a question, probably more for Leslie, just around when we release the 100,000. Is there some kind of way of tracking that money is actually spent, in the right? Well, not in the right way. I know they're going to do that, but do they have to provide some type of report, or they have to provide an invoice to release the money? Because it's kind of around broad figure.
So we provided, I think Fiona has already spoken to them about providing the backup for this money and how they're going to spend it. And it's a case of accountability forms, but they would have to have a PO. Yep. To be able to release the money in the first instance anyway.
So you would probably only release that, in stages. It wouldn't be released as 100,000 up front.
If it's a stage project, we can do it that way. If they're going to stage it within, I know they've got 3 stages or whatever, but if they're going to be spending separately, we can do it that way, or we can give it to them all up front if that's what they need.
Okay. Thank you.
Fiona will be managing that process, though.
Councillor Davidson.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to, I'm behind the community and what they're planning for the recreation facilities in that area. But there are a couple of things that I'd like to see happen first. And one is 8.1.1. I'd like to see a record of the concept plan that has been supported by the local community. And the second one is 8.1.3. I'd like to see the MOUs, or a letter of understanding from the landowners and administrators where the access agreements are required. And the reason for that is that in the past, I've seen many a track being built on what we thought was land administered by departments or organisations, but it goes through private land. And more recently, I've seen that. So I just want to make sure that, we get all the legal stuff right for a start. Thank you.
So just to clarify that, there are, it's a mixture of dockland, road reserve, and a small part of Scout land, and the Scouts have already given a written MOU. They haven't gone as far as lodging easements until they know that they can obviously get the funding, but that is an intention.
Yeah, I mean to say it's not so much the easement, it's an MOU, or just a letter of understanding in the first instance.
Yeah, so they've achieved those. Yeah.
Beg your pardon?
They have achieved those. They have letters of understanding and MOUs with the interested parties.
From the department as well?
From Department of Conservation, Scouts, and the landowner who currently has access through their land.
Okay, and what about council land?
The road reserve, I guess, well, they do have our approval, but it is a slightly different story in that we have to allow access through road reserve anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. So we would never impede their access to that land.
No, that's fine. And just touching on what Anna was talking about before, in terms of the funding, it would be quite good to have someone to monitor the performance or the goals that they're achieving in terms of dishing out the finance.
Thanks, Councillor Kogan.
Just a couple more questions. One, I guess I still have so with the funds and there being 108,000 in it, and it is available to the community, are these also the funds that the likes of the Kumara Chinese Garden would have been wanting to also potentially access?
That's the
Chinese
Kumara
Garden.
It's the Kumara Endowment Fund. It's completely separate again.
Okay, no, that's cool. That was my first question. The second one is, with this community group, is it, yeah, I know you're saying there's no public consultation required, but so like, are we talking about, is this a small group of people that have got together to achieve this, or is it a general feel within the Kumara community, that this will be a great asset for everybody to use?
It's definitely supported within the Kumara Junction community. They have put together an incorporated society so that they are a proper body. There are currently, I think, about 6 really driving the project, but there are about a dozen that are involved. So the part that has been opened up between Sanctuary Place and Serpentine Beach recently, anecdotally, is already getting a huge amount of walkers coming from Sanctuary Place. So all of those, the members of the public that are living there and not necessarily the drivers of it, are already using it. It looks like we have our Kumara Junction community on board now.
Gary, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor David. Apologies for tardiness coming on. It was a bit of a glitch on my part.
Who do you have with you there, Gary?
Hector Williams.
And you're representing the community group, are you?
Yes, it's the
Kumara Junction community. We're an incorporated society. We have been for a wee while. We've been around for a number of years doing a few projects around the local community.
So Hector, just tell us a wee bit about your group before we proceed with the specifics proposed here, just so we know what and who we're dealing with.
Okay, so it actually started a number of years ago when the Kumara Junction Primary School was closed, and the Ministry of Education at the time gave the community a grant for recreational facilities because we'd lost the amenities that were connected with the school. That money we still retain, and not much was done, I guess, over the years. In the last 3 to 4 years, we've resurrected the group. We've become an incorporated society. We represent what we estimate is roughly 300 people in the Kumara Junction community, and we enjoy quite a good level of support from the local community. We have undertaken a number of activities over the last few years. You may have heard about the roundabout. We've put quite a lot of effort into turning that into something that was quite attractive. We've just got some issues now, obviously. The painted shelter shed at the roundabout, you would have seen a few kekos on it. We've done some work on the Gentle Annie track. So we have a committee that runs the association, and that's Gary Hopkinson as deputy chair, myself as chair, Tracy Elton, Isla Lee, and Rob Nicol. So we form the business committee, if you like, of the association, and we're responsible for undertaking the projects, if you like, that the community as a whole has agreed on.
So where did the idea come from to establish these or re-establish these tracks?
So I guess the Gentilani track has always been quite a feature of the local community. It's an historic track. It's been around since gold mining times. Cage across the river. People turn right when they cross the river and come down to the local gold fields. So it's always been an amenity. After Cave Creek, some of the bridges that were present, that were there on the track, were uplifted by DOC because of the issues around potential safety. And so that kind of led to a decline, if you like, in people using it. The whitebaiters have been using it more recently, and they're very keen on the track. And of course, it gives them access to their stands off the track down the banks of the Taramaka River. So our society was, part of its objective is improving local amenities for the benefit of the local community and a wider community. And we identified some projects, including improving the roundabout, first point of entry to the coast in a way, the Gentilani track, and one or two other activities. But the Gentilani track has always been to us something that we can put some time and effort into and improve and make it something that's available for a wider community group to enjoy, both walking and cycling.
Through the chair, just to add to what Hector was saying, we actually tried to get additional funding through MB, through the cycle trail, in terms of adding an enhancement to the cycle trail, taking it from where the existing cycle trail is, just on the other side of Tuamakau Bridge, all the way down to the start of the coast to coast. Unfortunately, that application was declined. Hence the reason we're trying to, or the committee is trying to relift it again in terms of their own funding.
Gary and Hector, did you have any kind of presentation you wanted to make to us as a council today, or how do you want to proceed now?
I'd just like to open up a slide which shows the development plan. I believe that Fiona has actually circulated that previously, but we're looking at a stage development. We have already completed the first stage, which is, can you see the slide that's down here?
Yes.
Okay. The first stage runs from Sanctuary Place down to the start of the coast to coast, and we've completed a section of that. I can actually open that section.
Someone needs to put themselves on mute.
Councillor Davidson. Can you mute him, Diane?
Okay, so I'm going to put this one in. This is a section that we've already paid for and completed, and it hasn't come up. Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, that's in blue, Gary.
Yep, that's the one there. Yeah, so we call it Isla's Track. It was put through bush behind Isla Lee's new house. We've completed that section through here. The outstanding piece of it goes from Sanctuary Place, which is here, and it runs down to the beach. Once it hits Serpentine, there's a legal easement to be put in place over this, and that's part of our funding application. And that was done with a local contractor. It was managed by Rob Nicol. And so if we come back to the overall development plan, we've prepared at the suggestion of Fiona that we should look at a long-term plan, and that's what we've had prepared. Hadley Mills helped us do that. And so the application for funding is to go from the Scout Den through to the start of the bridge. We've already paid for a contractor to go through here about 5 years ago. He got as far as this section here, which was what we call one of the ravines. It was too hard for the machinery he had. So we spent about $1,600 opening that track up. But the work that we envisage now it involves some reasonably serious machine time at this point and this point and this point. The rest of it is simple track maintenance. Now, I think Councillor Davidson may have been in an earlier life responsible for some of that work about 20 years ago. The track is the track itself is in really solid condition. It's just that unfortunately it's been overgrown and there's quite a lot of water accumulating with sphagnum moss that needs to be taken off.
So Gary, is the $100,000 that you're asking for to be released for Gentle Annie enhancements alone?
88, there's an estimate we prepared. There's 88K for the enhancements on the Gentle Annie track. The balance is to finish off the easements that are required along River Road and along the Farm Road. Both of them involve Isla Lee, and she's part of our group. She's got a vested interest in it, and happy to see that proceed, so that the investment is protected in perpetuity with a legal easement.
Are there any issues of that sort in relation to the track? What's its legal status?
The legal status of the track is road reserve, which is administered by Westland District Council, my understanding.
I see on your plan there, Gary, some light lines in a purpley colour around the Gentle Annie track. Is that the road reserve, is it?
It is the road reserve that runs right through. There are two gravel reserves, one here and one, quite a large one here, and that gives us access to gravel through there because we've lost truck access off the Tiramacow Bridge.
So the estimates you've provided, Gary, how solid do you think they are or realistic?
We've been through with two contractors getting estimates or prices. Very difficult to pin anyone down to a price as such. So our estimates are based on work that we've already done. $3,500 to do stage one, which was about $28 a metre. It's about half the rate that is being spent up at the Bain Bay track that's been done by a community group up in up at Moana, and we've based some of those rates on those two. We're also buoyed by the knowledge that to put a little 1.5 tonne digger right through to the second ravine was $1,600. Now, we're talking quite different machine rates once we get into this work, but the way that we envisage it is that it would be working with council staff is to set up schedule of rates and monitor those so that we can keep control of those costs. But the majority of that cost is in resurfacing, and that's bringing in fine gravel, spreading, compacting, and it's a case of doing what we have to do once the track is cleared and managing it that way.
I guess our worry is that if the cost should blow out somewhere, what our liabilities to council might be.
All I can say is that with the crane restoration in Greymouth with the Grey Heritage Trust, we were unable to get 3 quotes for Lotteries Heritage, and we're doing it with one contractor. Schedule rates, labour and materials are scheduled, estimates are provided, and we monitor those on a pretty much a day-to-day basis. And if it looks as though we're getting into trouble, we've got the ability to stop. But with the program we have here, the early work is the hard stuff, which is to get the track opening up the 2 ravines so that they become a really good quality walking track. The majority of the rest of the track is already firm and in good condition. It's just that it's overgrown, and it doesn't take, it's only a day or two's work with a small machine to clear that track back. 88,000 is a lot of money to do that. We're reasonably confident that we can manage that. Certainly with the first stage, we did that on a similar basis. We were given an estimate of cost, and we came in about $1,800 underneath that budget, employing a local contractor from Kamara that had the machinery.
Okay, Simon, are you happy if I open it up for councillors to ask questions of Gary and Hector?
Yeah, please proceed.
Councillors, any councillors have questions for Gary and Hector?
Bruce Smith has his hand up, David.
Thank you. Bruce? Can't hear you, Bruce.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question. I just have a short statement. This is a community group that has actually done some stuff. They're a great community. They're very strong. What they're asking for is actually their own money. And so I will be strongly supporting the resolution when it's put. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Councillor Davidson, Chair. You're on mute, Councillor Davidson.
Can't hear you, Tanky, you're on mute.
Yeah, you can hear us now.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, firstly, I just, as I said before, I'm behind the community group up there and what they're planning to do. It's great to see. That section between the Sunset Point and the Scout Lodge, have you got an alignment for that at all, Gary?
Sorry, an alignment?
Yeah, have you walked that new alignment from the Sunset Point to the Scout Lodge den?
Yeah, many times. It's not in great condition.
No, I'm talking about the new alignment that you're proposing.
No, we've looked at putting in a switchback, which would give us a much better alignment.
Yes.
The problem we have is the Scouts will not give us a formal easement. They're happy for the status quo, and so the idea is that we'd be putting that back.
Okay then, thank you.
It would be we would prefer to have that alignment redone, but it's outside the budget that we've got, and we can't. We've tried for 2 or 3 years to get a formal agreement with Scouts, but they're happy for us to continue with access as it is.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, just Simon here. An earlier question was asked prior to you coming online. You have official agreement with all the stakeholders or the property owners to proceed?
Yes, we have, except for Scouts, but that's...
With Scouts, we have an informal agreement in writing that we can cross their land, essentially. With everybody else, Isla Lee is the only other landowner. That's right, Gary, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But do you need any consents for any such consents for stage 2, Gary, that to the Gentle Annie, because that's, as you say, road reserve? What consents would you require for that?
We've had a number of meetings with Simon and his staff, and it's my understanding, Simon, that we have there are no issues about proceeding on this. We have had meetings with DOC. They were quite happy to give us a license to occupy if we wish to actually proceed to move into the estate. In stage 4, which shows up on the plan, that is something that we would require a formal agreement in time, but that's not included in our application at the moment.
So with regard to the alignment on the road reserve, it is just maintenance of what's already existing. So it's not a new formation or even a modification. It's just it's considered maintenance.
Yeah, there will be some. So when we talk about the 2 ravines, there will be some realignment. It was not realignment, it's regrading, where there's been washouts and the side channels have been destroyed. They need to be put back in first.
So that's a nice, clean sort of setup, isn't it? When there are no landowners affected by that stage 2, makes life very simple, doesn't it?
And Sean has his hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, g'day. To me, it sounds like it's a very well planned and going to be executed pretty well. So it's a credit to the community as far as I'm concerned, and yeah, we'll get my support.
Okay, any further discussion before Gary, would you like to take that plan down, if you don't mind? Thank you. Anyone have any other issues before we consider the resolution? All right, I'm pleased to move firstly that the report be received, and secondly that Council approve the release of $100,000 from the reserve fund to the Kamara Junction Community Incorporated for the purpose of providing recreational facilities by way of a walking track through private land through Sanctuary Place and Serpentine Beach Road.
I'll
Someone like to second that? Councillor Latham. All those in favour, please wave your hands.
Can we please amend that? Sorry, because I'd incorrectly perceived that it was stage 1, not stage 2. So it'll be Gentle Annie as opposed to as opposed to the Sanctuary Place to Serpentine.
So we just take out the walking track through private land between Sanctuary Place and Serpentine Beach Road and substitute the words Gentle Annie track. Does that deal with that? Everyone happy with that? Everyone happy with that amendment? So as amended, all those in favour, please wave your hands. Passed. Fantastic. Gary and Hector, thank you very much for your work out there. We are in awe of what you're doing, and we might, if you make a great job, put you in charge of a few other council projects if you're not careful.
Before Gary and Hector go, can we just, Simon talked earlier about Waka Kotahi and the update for the roundabout. I wonder, now's probably not the appropriate time to have the discussion, but can we set up a forum to have the discussion?
Are you referring to in today's meeting?
I don't know. No, sorry. You said it's part of the action list. You were going to, at some stage in today's meeting, we would talk about the Kamara Junction roundabout.
Sorry, I thought you were going to comment after I'd finished the action list in terms of your current status. I should have come back to you.
Simon, is it appropriate to ask or invite Gary and Hector to comment about where they see things are at?
Can I make a suggestion that both Councillor Kogan and Councillor Martin update us on the discussion they had with NZTA, which I'm not sure if Gary or Hector are aware of?
Okay. Please, Latham.
Sorry to sort of hijack the meeting a bit and throw this on you. So obviously it's quite a contentious issue and quite a visual issue, and one that unfortunately isn't in the realms of Western District Council. But as advocates, community advocates, Jenny and I asked for a meeting with Waka Kotahi to try and advance and understand where their position was in relation to maintenance for the roundabout. So they're of the view at that meeting, or they expressed the view that maintenance, that when Jenny had asked for was not within scope of maintenance. Basically, it was cosmetic maintenance, and that Waka Kotahi deals primarily in health and safety maintenance first. So is it visible? Can vehicles move around the roundabout safely? Is there clear visibility? So obviously that wasn't accepted by us, but it was met with quite a lot of pushback in relation to their budgets and their budget amounts. So where we got to with that is the staff member responsible was about to go on a period of leave, but is given an undertaking that when they return in March, that there will be a work with KiwiRail to fix and reinstate the curb and the damage that was done to the roundabout. And there will be needs to be a plan put in place to see the plantings or a variation of the plantings restored. So we were kind of coming at it from the view that it needs to be done with urgency. Their position is that they hope to have that work done by the end of March, having talked to the community group there. But I just think it's a really good time with Hector and Gary on the line to actually just clarify if that's their understanding of things.
Not sure what my understanding is, actually. I've been trying to get alongside KiwiRail, the area manager, for quite some time, because I was kind of given an unofficial undertaking when railways were deconstructing the roundabout some time back, that they would reinstate it and that it would be done in early spring, and that they would employ a landscape architect to do that work. So of course nothing happened. We got a meeting with KiwiRail and Transit, I think in about November of last year, and at that stage it was a really interesting meeting, but I got the impression that KiwiRail and Fulton Hogan would work with the local community to reinstate. Transit were adamant that they did not want plantings, and part of that was access onto the roundabout because of the cost of traffic management, and that was an issue, and certainly that had been an issue for us in the past. So the discussion at the meeting was around rocks and maybe some plantings around the rocks, a little bit like around the clock tower, I guess, to make it an attractive feature for people entering onto the coast. So getting hold of Kiwi, I've been trying to get some undertakings from Kiwi Rail ever since. I actually got a letter yesterday or an email back from them saying that it had been difficult and that they were working with Transit, and that Transit were requiring the perimeter of the roundabout to be reinstated or to be concreted or hot mixed so that cars didn't hit rocks as soon as they came off the road, and hit the roundabout. He's saying it's a slow process and that they've been working with Transit for this whole time on that, but didn't give me any indication of when it might be done. What we're concerned about, what I'm concerned about anyway, is that there's been nothing apart from that meeting that we called in November. There's been just no communication and no consultation, I guess, maybe that's not quite the right word, but no discussion with the local community about what it might look like, considering that we've put many hours of voluntary labour into it. Mr. Birchfield donated us truckloads of soil for the roundabout. We've spent about $4,000 on plants for the roundabout, and it's just been a sort of a wall of silence really since. And I just get the sense that anytime I hear a heavy machinery down there, I said to Gary, I get anxious because I think they've started without us, and that's kind of that's where we're up to.
Councillor Cogan has your hand up, Chair.
Yes, Hector and Gary, look, first of all, to you guys, thank you so much for all of the work that you guys actually put into for a very long time, that roundabout looking as good as what it is. As Councillor Martin discussed, we had a meeting with Waka Kotahi recently, and I did some videoing of that roundabout and also the one at Arahua. And I have to say, that the outcome from that meeting was actually completely unsatisfactory. Waka Kotahi, yes, intimated to us that they would follow it up with Kiwi Rail. But then, it frustrates me even more the fact that you've also been having contact with Kiwi Rail and, there's just no communication back. And the other situation we've got with Waka Kotahi as well is pretty much because we've not only raised about there, but also around signage and cleaning of mowing of the berms on the sides of the roads, when you're going into the bridge areas, you've got the barriers there that are starting to get all dented and are as filthy as anything everywhere. And basically their response to all of that was they don't have a budget. And as far as they are concerned, that unless something is completely broken and stacked and has to be replaced, then that's not really going to be something they will be fixing or cleaning. And pretty much it'll just continue to get longer everywhere, more weeds everywhere, and filthy signage, and bridges in disarray, and of course roundabouts. So it was good. Thank you very much for actually speaking today, so that gave clarification around that. But I would certainly like us as a council to have further discussion around this matter, because it's totally unacceptable. And it's also very frustrating when we've got, and we'd suggested to them at the meeting, we have wonderful volunteers in the community like you guys that are willing, if they're saying there's no budget, to go in and, keep these areas tidy and the same out at Arahura, and then you get hit with, well, you can't do that because, then you're going to have to you know, do traffic management plans. And yeah, so in one respect they're saying there's no money and we're not going to do anything about it, and then in the next respect they're saying, well, neither can you. So
Mayor Smith,
yeah.
your hand up, Chair.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Jenny.
Mr. Chair, look, this is really straightforward. Do you go into someone? Do you go into someone else's property and wreck it, and then leave simply because you can? It's absolutely disgraceful, and NZTA need a absolute rev up. This community has put all that money together, has done this work with NZTA and Kiwi Rail. It looked absolutely fantastic, and 5 minutes later they come along and wreck it, and then turn around and put obstacles in place. I would like to suggest that we write to the minister. This is ridiculous, and someone's head needs to roll. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Simon, do you agree that that's an action we can take or should take?
If the council believes so. We've written previously to the area manager without success. He has been in front of council and was raised here again.
Do we need a motion that we should take that step, Simon, or can you just do that from this meeting?
I'll take it as an action out of this forum.
Okay, thank you. Gary and Hector, look, thank you very much for your participation today. You're doing a fantastic job out there. We are in awe of what you're doing, and all the best as you develop Gentle Landing Track. We look forward to walking on it. But Gary, last time I did it, it was a bit of a bog, so it would be nice if it was drier on a wet day. If you could factor that in somehow, please.
I've made a diary note, Councillor Carruthers, for their next working beat.
Hey, thanks, guys. You can. I invite you now to leave the meeting. Thank you very much for your participation.
Sorry, Worship. Sorry, Chair. Yeah. We need a resolution to receive the presentation.
Okay. I think we did, didn't we? I included that in my resolution, Simon. Did you get that?
Diane, are you comfortable with that?
Through you, Chair, we moved that the report be received, but we can also add that the presentation from the Kumara Junction Community Group as well.
Oh, okay. Could you do that, Di?
Yes.
Please?
Yes, I will.
Thanks, Gary and Hector. Much appreciated. See you later.
Chair, we have both Councillor Cogan and Councillor Martin with their hands up.
Yes, Jenny?
Yeah, look, sorry, just getting back to obviously that Waka Kotahi discussion and that motion that I fully support from His Worship. I also have to wonder if that's going to be enough. Now, the other thing, because I was absolutely horrified at the response from Moira at that meeting, and I asked for their response to actually be provided to us in writing. And we have not received, and I don't know if Councillor Latham Martin has, but I certainly haven't received any correspondence from them. And I would suggest that with that correspondence, is there an opportunity here where we need to get some publicity in place, because the response, if that was to be actually fed out into the community, I should imagine we'll get a lot of really, a lot of very angry feedback from it.
Councillor Martin?
I think it's going round and round and round in circles. I think we resolved to write to the minister, CC the area manager in, and we hope that by the end of March the issue is resolved. I think it's not council core business, but we get so much feedback on it. Community groups are trying hard. They're advocating to us. We need to advocate to them. Let's resolve to write to the minister.
Maybe a convoy needs to occupy it, Councillor.
Occupy the roundabout. So I'll move that we write to the Minister of Transport, raising the issues surrounding the Kumara Junction roundabout, requesting that immediate action be taken to rectify the situation and restore it to previous standards.
I don't believe that that's going to resolve the bigger picture and a resolution around what's going to happen with the rest of the areas like Arahura at the moment that's still been left after a month-long discussion with them, and nothing's still changed there, and the weeds are getting even thicker.
Well,
So,
we need to move on, councillors. Simon is going to write to the Minister as an action matter from this, and there's only so much we can do. That's probably the best thing we can do at the present time. So let's move on if everyone's happy. The next matter is the...
hang on.
Excuse me,
no,
Chair.
I'm not.
Yes, councillor.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm not happy to move on. I would, yeah, like some further discussion on this, and the feeling
We've had extension discussion, councillor, and there's only so much we can do.
Well, I think that we should also consider getting more information out to the communities around the response of Waka Kotahi.
Simon? We obviously go through our official channels when managing our relationship with NZTA and KiwiRail when required. We, at our formal meetings, talk about maintenance aspects of the rail. We're not going to get into a social campaign against NZTA or KiwiRail from council, from a staff point of view.
Okay, let's move on to the next matter on the
Excuse
agenda.
me, Chair. Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Can we have a seconder for Councillor Martin's resolution, please?
Well, Simon said he didn't need a resolution. Simon, would you prefer a resolution?
If that's what council wants, I'm happy for a resolution.
Someone willing to second Councillor Martin's motion?
Smith has given us thumbs up.
Given us thumbs up. Thank you. All those in favour, please wave your hands. I think the motion's passed. Carried. Thank you. Right, the next matter is the West Coast Civil Defence Emergency Management Revised Partnership Agreement. Simon, that's in your court, I think.
Yep. So thank you, Chair. Just to give some background to the Emergency Management Partnership Agreement, it was first compiled in 2016. Following a review late last year from an independent auditor, it found that the partnership agreement was lacking and it wasn't indicative of current practice or best practice. Based on that, we have resolved to write a new partnership agreement. This is the draft of that partnership agreement. Just a point of note that actually has been modified since I've tabled this. There was a workshop completed on Wednesday, which has modified it slightly, and it will be coming back to council for full adoption in March. So I'll take it as read and take any questions.
Anyone have any questions of Simon? I see, Councillor Cogan, your hand is still up. Do you want to raise an issue on this matter? Okay, thank you. Councillor Cogan, your hand's still up. Any questions anyone has of Simon?
Jane Neal has her hand up.
It may have been in the document, but when staff go to other areas, how is the staff cost covered, both in terms financially and in terms of workload?
So the partnership agreement talks about supporting each other. Most of the work that's handled via supporting other districts is in-kind support. So the costs are borne by the council. We obviously get roundabout, so we've helped Willa out recently. They've helped us in the past. So it really does even out. There are some costs that are obviously covered by the area concerned. Most of them are impacted by bringing any external staff in to help and support.
Thank you.
Paul?
Thank you. I think it's necessary to have a reset with this. I mean, civil defence, I've never known anything as bureaucratic, to be honest. There's layer upon layer upon layer of bureaucracy that gets in the way, in my view. You know, the old tried and true method of having people on the ground and, you know, practicalities and common sense seems to have been overtaken by bureaucracy and formulatic. Following the manuals, the whole thing is a disaster within civil defence, in my view. But and I think that report, that review, did nailed it on the head. So a reset is definitely necessary.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, there seems to be not much discussion, so we might just proceed with the resolution. So I'm happy to move, firstly, that the report be received, and secondly, that Council endorse the West Coast Civil Defence Partnership Agreement. Would someone like to second that motion, please? Councillor Neal. All those in favour, please wave your hands. Passed. Thank you very much. Next matter on the agenda is the speed limits consultation document, and Carl Jackson, I think, is to speak to that. Are you there, Carl? I see you in the middle room, middle floor, in the distance.
Yes, I'm here just to fix the camera angle there for us. So, good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors, management. So, effectively, this speed limits consultation is a bit of an addition to the work that we did a couple of years ago with the initial speed limit review. At this stage, we're not proposing any specific changes, but this is more of an opening of the dialogue between us and the community, just to gauge what people want to see us doing going forward. I know we've got some areas out there that people are getting used to, and we really want to engage with them to assess where they believe we need to make other changes. So it's the first part of a multi-stage process. And initially, the agency, Waka Kotahi, suggested that we don't go down the process of doing any more changes at the moment, but we are welcome to consult and start using that avenue. So this is really the crux of that matter. Now, just additional, in the forms that are there as the appendices, the web links and email were what we used in the initial consultation. They will actually change, but that's only a minor addition. So with that, I'll take the report as read and open for questions.
Anyone have any questions of Carl? Latham?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Carl, for your work on this. It was an instruction in council, so thanks for completing it. Just a couple of things from me. I think that the timeline's too long. I think going from now to August is far too long to have a conversation with the community. So I would be far more comfortable with sort of a 4 to 6 week consultation timeline as opposed to 6 months. It's compared to other consultation matters, it seems extreme. I understand the timeline for 2024 and sort of the reluctance to change anything, but we have had quite clear feedback from a number of individualised roads in the district where they're actually requesting speed limit changes, and we're going to receive that feedback anyway as part of this. So I do think there is a necessity to actually address those concerns as well. Where a group of people living on the same road are all saying, we really want our speed limit changed from X to Y. I think we need to have a mechanism to capture that and act on that. At the moment, all we would do is capture it, and then we would in say September. So even actually, the new council would then be tasked with the job of, well, how do we implement some of these outcomes from the consultation? You're talking Lake Canary, where there's the issues around both bays there, and you're talking also some other roads just out of Hokitika that we receive quite frequent correspondence on as councillors. So whether those speed limits should be adjusted is a matter, I guess, for staff to recommend and for councillors to resolve. But I think there needs to be a mechanism to capture generic feedback, like you're proposing, and then a mechanism to take that feedback into a report to council recommending some changes. At the moment, we only address sort of the first component of that, and it would be in September that that report would actually be forthcoming, or October. So
what shorter term are you suggesting?
Well, I would like some feedback from Carl on, like, if this process, the report talks about it being, stood up quite soon in terms of going out for consultation on the 7th of March. I don't believe it needs to be open till, the start of August. I think that is far too long. People will, it will just, people that are passionate about the subject will submit, and then so there'll be an influx of submissions, and then I'd say it will just die off anyway. So let's capture that feedback. I'd say 4 to 6 weeks, but I'm not a consultation expert, so I'd need Carl's input. And on
Carl, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, through the chair, just I did leave it deliberately long for the simple fact that it gives us more opportunities to do a bit more direct engagement with some of the parties of the community. Just in terms of what Councillor Martin was saying, with some areas where we know people have requested lower limits, we could adopt other practices that we've done in the past and install some temporary speed limits in the interim while we're going through that process as well. So we did a similar thing on the Hokitika Canary tram, and we do a seasonal one out at Hands Bay as well too, which proves to be quite effective. So I mean, we're open to doing some temporary works as well that we can use to as a stopgap of sorts. But I think it is important to keep a broader term. Maybe 6 months might be a bit too long, but we could perhaps shorten it by a couple of months in that. But I think it is really important to get that dialogue going and get the buy-in from the greater community. I know we have quite a few vocal supporters. There's equally some vocal people that are against it as well, but it's about trying to make sure we do have that right level of conversation about what we're proposing.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I totally agree with what Latham is saying. I think it's a hugely long time. I don't think we've got anything to gain by it. The community are aware of the speed limit changes that came around, was it 2020, I think. So the awareness is already there, and they know that there's more looking at this to be done. So they're anticipating it anyway. And yeah, totally agree. 6 weeks max. I can't see the point in dragging it out. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Paul?
So, excuse me, but I must be missing a step in the process here, because I mean, I don't even know where this all sprang from, apart from the former Associate Minister of Transport from the Green Party that wanted to get rid of cars, and then came out with wanted to lower the speed limits at the same time. And now we've got a campaign that's just starting to hit its straps with the government on this. But yeah, there's no. why are we doing this? I don't understand. There's a letter that's doing the rounds with the mayors and chairs at the moment, because one of the other councils on the West Coast has taken the opposite line to what this council is doing, or appears to be doing, because they don't see the need for it at all. They think that this is jumping the gun, and I agree. And the NZTA have said, well, yeah, there's no need for doing the consultation at this stage. Why don't you just tie ho and just wait? I just don't see that this should be on the agenda. As I say, that there's another council that's rubbing against this. What evidence are there that the other councils on the West Coast are even starting anything like this?
Simon, do you have a response to what Paul said?
As Councillor Martin alluded to, this is an action that's been requested by council, so we're following through on that action from following the first round of reviews.
Yes, I understand that, but I questioned it at that time as well as to where did it actually come from, and is it necessary? I mean, it hasn't been a directive. Why are we doing it?
It's just to highlight those areas that I suppose been incorrectly classified when you look at the safety elements of road speeds on roads, and some roads aren't designed to handle the speeds that are actually within their speed limit now. So this is just, I suppose, recalibrating where they should sit.
Yeah, through the chair, that much is clear, and I understand that and support that. But this goes beyond that, doesn't it? This is like a whole of the roading network, with the view to dropping everything down to 80 kilometres per hour. Back when I got my licence, the open road limit was 80 kilometres per hour. It didn't work then, and I can't see it's going to work now.
This is not the national mandate. This is our own control around our own speed limit. So some of them may still stay at 100 kilometres an hour following the review. Am I correct in that, Carl?
Yeah, through the chair. This is really just a process where we're just seeking more feedback from the road users as to what their views are on it. We're not proposing any specific changes to any limits at all through this consultation process. It's purely a sounding board just to see what thoughts are out there relative to what we've done and what we could do in future.
Carl, what sort of staff resources will be devoted to this? It's just your time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really just my time for the analysis of the feedback. Maybe somebody else is on team, but it's not a particularly large part of my time for this side of things. So yeah.
Well, councillors,
sorry, David, we've got two more hands up.
I'm sorry. Yes, Councillor Hartshorn.
Yeah, I must be misunderstanding this. I thought this was a directive from government initially.
No. This has come from council, so it's not. I mean, it sort of links in with the government initiatives, but it's not directly related to them.
Yeah, I have to agree with Paul, but like we're becoming a namby-pamby state. The road limits are the road limits, but the cars are far superior than what they used to be, and all this sort of is so much different. And for example, when you go for a drive around from Blenheim to Nelson, you're doing 80 k's or 90 k's. We don't want to end up like that here, do we? I know council have passed it, but it's just getting a bit out of hand in my mind. But
thanks.
So I think
Bruce. Sorry.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Bruce.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I always thought it was a national directive. I didn't realise it was a council-driven directive. There's one area, which is Lake Canary, that each year we're going to drop the speed limit out there. It's quite dangerous. This summer has been terrible out there, and it's because I heard Carl say that we've put a temporary out there, but there was no temporary there in November or December that I'm aware of. This follows on from that crazy decision saying, look, we're going to reduce the road speeds, and the latest campaign, which is we're going to go to 0 road deaths by 2050. Now, the difference between predator-free by 2050 and 0 road deaths is quite huge. Predator-free is actually achievable, and the only way that death-free is achievable on the roads is you've got to take all transport off there, because the big hunks of steel driving around. So we've got to be very careful we don't fall into the mamby-pamby trap that is out there. If consultation is required, I would suggest 30 days, not 60. 60 is much too long, or not at all. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, councillors, we need someone to move something.
Well, I would move that the recommendations, but I'd just amend the timeline, please, to bring it forward
To what, councillor?
30 days.
Okay.
Happy to second that.
Who was that? Jane, Councillor Neal, thank you. So just to be clear, we've got a motion that firstly the report be received, and secondly that we approve the speed limits public consultation document subject to the proviso that it's carried out within 30 days.
And I also just want to make one further comment, which I think will hopefully clarify and capture Paul's, Ian's and Bruce's intent, which is we should really strengthen the case as part of this, that we're actually talking about our local roading network. We're not talking about the state highway network. So if people put in a submission suggesting from Hokitika to Ross should be 80 Ks, it's actually not even able to be considered because it's a state highway discussion. So I think making it...
But that could be made clear in the consultation document probably later.
Correct. Correct. As part of the consultation document, we are asking for feedback on council-controlled or whatever the correct terminology is, local roads, locally controlled roads.
Okay, so are we clear on what we're voting on, councillors? All those in favour of the motion, please wave your hands. Those against, wave your hands. One against. Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll proceed now to the Three Waters update report. Scott, I see you're sitting there anxious and ready to go. Welcome, and go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the report as read, but before I ask for questions, I just thought I'd give a quick update on 2 meetings I attended by Zoom yesterday in relation to Three Waters. So there was a meeting in the morning of chairs and mayors around the Three Waters subject, and a lot of the focus of that was around what I touch on in the report, around discussions around alternative models, representation and influence. It was contrasted quite starkly by the meeting in the afternoon, which was the DIA transition unit meeting. And they are absolutely steaming ahead with this. And there was I would recommend to councillors and to colleagues to go in and listen to the recording of that meeting, and also to look at the content of the presentation that they supplied. To give an example, they are talking about having their asset management investment plans in place by July 2023, which is a year before the transfer date. In my mind, that would put a heck of a lot of pressure on councils to supply documents, information, financial background, data, etc., to allow them to do this. So effectively, in my view, they are minimising their workload post-transfer by putting it onto councils pre-transfer. So I would recommend that you do have a look at that. It is quite an interesting statement from them for councillors to have a look at. Moving back to the main report, I'm quite happy to take questions on the content.
Thank you, Scott. Councillors, any questions? Paul?
Thank you. The doesn't seem that there's any doubt that the government are going to make councils swallow this rat, no matter how much or how many councils protest. And they haven't put 10,000 extra bureaucrats and jobs in Wellington for no reason. So they're going to make it stick. So what Scott says, I have no doubt that they're steamrolling ahead with this full time. What it's going to miss, of course, is what any plumber will tell you, is that the real silent killer with the water is the state of the old underground networks with with the old lead pipes. And every council is faced with that, and plumbers have been warning for years that of the danger of this with lead poisoning. And, that's not being addressed by this Three Waters reform. Can't be addressed by it, short of tearing up every street in the country. But the thing that concerns me really is with our report is Fox Glacier. And I just wonder, it's an extraordinary number compared to everywhere else, and has only a handful of exceedances, but Fox Glacier is like 10, and it's just seems out of kilter. So there's clearly something wrong there. I know there's a lot of money being spent on it, but the rest of the report shows that there's actually no issue with Three Waters delivery in Westland. But Fox Glacier, though, is a worry. I just wonder if Scott could give a comment on that.
I can. I mean, Fox has been an outlier for us, and I agree with you, Paul, is that the report in general is quite positive. The most recent issues with Fox Glacier, which actually happened 17th of January, turned out to be a faulty valve on part of the machine that chlorinates the water. If you go through the history of where we've been with Fox, you can see there were a number of. I've got the detailed spreadsheet that actually talks about how many cases were in each year. So there was E. coli identified in early January 2021, again in March 21, on a couple of in June 21. So the investment that we're putting into Fox, we are anticipating will resolve a lot of these issues, and we have put a lot of investment, which is nearly at its completion stage.
Would also like to highlight in terms of Fox, every time we had a significant weather event, obviously there was some turbidity issues that impacted on Fox as well, and potentially some clogging of filters, etc. So it is a plant that is close to being replaced.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the update. I had similar questions or comments in relation to Fox as Paul's raised, but I think it's probably important that we don't take the heat off this. I mean, there is such a campaign at the moment that's growing from councils through Communities for Local Democracy that's getting significant support. And the more I think we can do to push back on the government's proposals around three water reform, the better. I think it's really important that councillors sign the declaration if it aligns with what they believe in, and show that we take a position of not supporting the reforms as they currently stand, and continue our united voice as Westland and the West Coast, most of the West Coast, that these reforms are not going to work for us.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, anyone else have any comments? See Jane.
Thank you, David. Just a couple of questions. One was the boil water notices, and it said I think Ross hadn't had any, but I'm fairly sure that Ross has had several. Can you answer that one, please?
I can go through, and again, I'm looking at the Ross in front of me. So we had a conserve water notice 31st of August 2021. We had a notification again in August 21, which was about the water treatment plant not operating at maximum capacity due to damaged filters, and that was the new ones that we'd had put in that we then had to replace, and we topped up at the time with tankered water. And then we had some earlier stuff in July 2021 where contractors hit a water main, and I'm just looking earlier. So if you've got some details, Councillor Neil, that I haven't got, it would be really useful just to touch base on that, because that would suggest that the records might be slightly wrong. But we did quite a detailed piece of analysis on this. So I've actually got data across all the water plants that we've got within Westland.
Yep, thank you. I'll check that up and feed it back to you. And a couple of other questions, please. Recent and current investment, what sort of time was that covering?
Right, just bear with me a moment.
I haven't got my papers up on the
No, it's
screen.
all right. I'm juggling between a PDF and so in terms of the one that starts with Fox Glacier Water Treatment Plant, is that the one you're looking at?
I've just written notes to myself, and it said recent and current investment. So that was a quote.
Okay. We're talking in terms of the LTP stuff. We've been doing the prefabrication work on the Fox treatment plant, and that's nearly done. On the Arahura water treatment plant, that's been constructed, it's been installed on site, and we are commissioning, once we can get Kiwi Rail to approve a power connection. Ross water treatment plant works programmed to start. Well, they already have started. Currently awaiting better weather.
Excuse me, Scott.
So it's basically taking into account the past 12 months of work.
Yeah, I mean I've taken this from the capital projects report. So the stuff that I'm talking about is within the immediate sort of last 12 to 18 months or so.
Yeah, and with the finances, the Fox TIF funding was specified as, or the Fox cost was specified as having TIF funding. Was that the only government input of dollars, or were there others that weren't rate funded?
That I don't have with me.
Bear in mind, a lot of those projects were included in the $6.9 million we received for the tranche 1 of the Three Waters reform.
Yeah. And others before that?
We have received TIF funding before for the Franz Joseph wastewater treatment plant, 1.8 million, I think, from recollection. And a number of other minor Kamara upgrade was a TIF funding application. A few other ones as well.
I think it's quite good when we're looking at the investment that's gone into it to know how much has been funded by ratepayers and how much has been funded externally. But
yeah.
Thank you.
I can dig those. I can dig those numbers out. I mean, the purpose behind it was to demonstrate to council just how much money that everybody's put into this actually to improve the position within Westland over recent years.
Bruce.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Three Waters. Yes, the government is pushing full steam ahead, like there is no opposition in the country. You will know that Dunedin City Council has joined the group, and yesterday Masterton joined the group. It's now at 29 councils. We've said all the way through that 51% of all councils in New Zealand will join, and I'm very confident that will occur. There is no legislative requirement for our staff to do any work from any of the groups that are racing towards putting their plans together based on a bluff. And there is no legislative backup for them to come to our council and say, we want your staff to do X, Y, Z. So it's very clear that anything that they require will become a Lagoima request, and they'll be charged accordingly. And so while you may feel that this Three Waters is going to happen, and the government definitely feels that, and I accept that. However, we've had discussions with Eugenie Sage, which were very, very pleasant, very, very firm, with National Party, with ACT, and they're all uncomfortable about the democratic process that's going through, and also the fact that some of the statements being made out there and treated as fact are in fact wrong. So don't be. This is a long journey we're on here, and while government thinks it's a walk in the park, the walk hasn't even started yet. But my firm indication is we are not to spend any money based on the whim of some bureaucrat in Wellington who wants our staff to spend hours doing X, Y, and Z, because they have no legislative backup, and we have that in, from as a legal opinion. So a long way to go. Great fun. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thanks, Bruce. Councillor Martin. You're on mute. Latham, you're on mute.
I am on mute, sorry. I just had technology issues. I just wanted to raise also another thing in the report. It's in the report, which I was just looking at. But the 3.6, and this is another sort of example of centralisation versus localisation and sort of democracy, is that the sort of the changes to the Health Act, where now the Ministry of Health will Ashley Bloomfield can now decide which water supplies in the country actually receive fluoride added to them, so mass fluoridation. And I'm not suggesting that fluoride in water is necessarily wrong, but what is wrong is that it's dictated to us at a government level and not at a local level. So there's, of all the consultations and the pushback, there's been significant pushback in the past about any of the water treatments being fluoridated. And now there's the ability for the Minister of Health, or the Ministry of Health, sorry, to add fluoride into our water supply without any sort of consultation or work being done with local residents or even the council. We would just be mandated and told fluoride needs to be added. Please start adding it from X date. I mean, it's so wrong, and it really needs to be pushed back on. I think all of these things are just sort of sliding through, and sort of the noise and of the COVID fear that's out there at the moment. But we really, really need to make a stand. I mean, that's an incredibly bold step for a government to make, to say that they can decide centrally which regions have fluoride added to their water based on health statistics, without any consultation at a local level. I really think we need to make a position on that.
Thanks, Councillor Paul.
Thank you. Councillor Martin raised exactly what I was going to point out. Yes, this is the sting in the tail of this whole Three Waters nonsense is mandating of fluoridation and chlorination of public water supplies, and mandate seems to be the modus operandi of this lot, I'm afraid. In the past, that would have been called nanny state, but if this isn't nanny state, then what? I don't know what it is really. But it does need to be. The councils do need to make a stand on it. Personally, I don't have any issue with fluoridation, but it's the point and the principle of the government and once again imposing its will. Sticks in the craw.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, I think everyone's had their say, have they?
Councillor Crothers, Scott wants to say something.
Scott, say something.
Just to pick up on that point, I actually asked a question yesterday at the DIA meeting, which was how was the transition unit actually coordinating with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of the Environment in relation to all the issues that seem to be coming in our direction at the minute. And there was a kind of a wry smile at the other end where they admitted that they hadn't.
Huh. Okay. Well, we need someone to move that the report be received, that Scott's report be received, please. Someone to move that. Councillor Hart, and seconded by Councillor Neal. All those in favour, wave their hands. Thank you. Passed. Next item is the renaming of a portion of Greenstone Road. So, Carl, in the cave, over to you again.
Right. Thank you. Good afternoon again. So this is just to address a bit of an anomaly that's crept in over the years with Greenstone Road and the numbering, the urban versus the rapid numbering. It's been like this for quite some time, and with the development that's going on, we just need to find a resolution for it, and this is what I've proposed. So with that, I'll take the report as read and look for questions.
Okay, councillors, it's a weighty matter. Anyone want to weigh in? Paul?
Just that it's a good solution to a minor problem, but Sandys Hill Road seems sensible. It's my understanding is that's the old name for it anyway. I just noticed in option 3 where someone had suggested Perns Road relating to the old brewery, but said suggested by only one submitted. Whilst research does indicate the presence of the breweries along this road, the exact location isn't clear. Well, that's not quite true, because I mean that was pointed out to me by old Wally McNabb. Showed exactly where it is. It's well known where it was. But anyway, I agree though with the recommendation of Sandys Hills Road.
Thank you, Paul. Jane?
Yeah, it's always a bit confusing when one road just arbitrarily changes into another road without an intersection or anything. So I don't think it's a great solution. And the residents quite definitely okay with that, so they'll change the name, but they weren't happy to change the numbers. I would have thought a name change was had more effect on them. And I would delete the S from Sandy's, because if you can't have an apostrophe with it, it doesn't actually make sense.
Are you being pedantic now, councillor?
Yep, absolutely.
Carl, are you going to respond to that? How's your spelling and your grammar?
So that was I did leave the apostrophe off because we can't have those in road names. So it takes the possessive out of it. Yeah, there is an intersection there. It's the intersection of Union Street. So it is a defined point in that context. So it's not in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, numbering is very challenging to change when people have been using existing numbers for many, many years. I think that's why this issue came about in the first place, because there was an attempt to implement rapid numbering for that road, which predominantly didn't take off. None of the existing numbers changed, and it was simply anywhere where there wasn't a number, they've just used the rapid number. And because it runs in opposing directions, it just creates too much confusion. So it is a lot easier to change the name and then reallocate numbering accordingly rather than change too many numbers.
So, Carl, does rapid number always go north to south or vice versa as a directional decision that it's made on?
No, it can run any direction. Generally, the way that the numbering has been done has been tied in with how our roads have been captured in our roading database. So in the instance of Greenstone Road, it was captured within our database starting at the northern end and running in a southerly direction. But the urban numbering actually started closer to Union Street and ran in a northerly direction. So that's where the issue came about in that side of things. So it's a mixture of two different systems that are colliding here.
Paul?
Just to comment on Councillor Neal's suggestion about the Sandy's or Sandy Hill, it has to, in my view, it has to be Sandy's with or without the apostrophe, because he was an individual, is my understanding. He was a character who lived in that particular part just out of Kamara, and without the S, it makes no sense because nothing to do with sand. It was to do with the man.
I totally understand that, Paul. Without the apostrophe, it doesn't make sense either, but I will shut up on that one now.
I think it's just a reality with signage these days, fortunately. Okay, someone prepared to move the motion that's in your papers, please. Councillor Davidson is prepared to move, firstly, the report be received, and secondly, that the council resolves to rename the section of Greenstone Road that runs from Union Street to Stafford Loop Road to Sandys Hill Road. Someone prepared to second that, please? Councillor Hart. All those in favour, wave your hands, please. Motion passed. Diane, how are we going with Joanne Conroy?
Yes, we have the team all connected, and I'm going to share their presentation, Chair.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Joanne. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
Who do you have with you there?
So I've got Chris Gawley and Chris Ray in the room with me.
Okay, we've got to consider your 6-monthly report, and as well as the application to the Local Government Funding Agency. It occurred to me that we should consider your update firstly, because that will let us know where things are at in terms of the performance of the company and so on before we consider the second matter. Are you happy to do it that way?
Absolutely, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're going to have Diane sharing a PowerPoint presentation for us. So it's the 6-monthly update of the group. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the consolidated figures in time for the presentation. So, but Western Holdings doesn't really trade a lot, so it actually doesn't make a lot of difference. So we'll just, Diane, if you could just move on to the next slide, please. And that's really just an introduction that our mission or vision is to grow and protect our communities, our economy, and our unique natural environment. Next slide, please. And that's, sorry, next one again. Next one. So just as far as Western Holdings goes, the things that we're working on are obviously the next paper, which relates to borrowing from the Local Government Funding Authority, and that's something that's been we've been talking about for some time now. And over the past few weeks, we've been working on the statements of intent. So both Destination Westland and Westroads have completed those and submitted them to us, Western Holdings. We're going to consolidate them all along with the finances over today and tomorrow, and we intend to have that to council on Monday, Tuesday of next week as required. It didn't sort of fit with the meeting schedule this time, so I'm not sure whether Simon would want to then just send those out to the councillors independently of a meeting for any comment or feedback, or whether we would present that formally at the March meeting. So we'll await instructions on that. Next slide, please.
Okay, so yeah, Chris Corley. I'm also wanting to update you on where Destination Westland's at. We've had a few challenges we seem to be getting used to. So Wild Foods, unfortunately, was a casualty of the recent COVID red light changes. Fortunately, we've done a lot of work in the background, secured most of the entertainment and also a few other things for next year, which is awesome. And we're ever hopeful that the event will go off next year. There's been a lot of planning for that. So that's that one. We're underway with our first pensioner housing project in Destination Westland, which is pretty exciting. Something we've been focused on for a while. Yeah, that's going to be, watch the space, because we're going to continue to do a lot of that over the next year. The heliport, as you know, is still challenged until the international tourism sort of thing starts to come back. I think it will be. So we're just doing everything we can to support those businesses and try and keep as many of them there as possible for when we actually reopen. And then the next kind of final point that I'll make is, the swimming pool stage 1 is complete, and we're really looking forward to the winter to get into stage 2. So thank you. Next slide. Pretty pleasing result in regards to our financials. To the point now, I think that we've diversified the income enough to sustain the challenges that we faced with COVID. In previous years, it's always been challenging, particularly with the tourism side so heavily weighted in our income. You can see now we're on track and continuing to show a profit, which is just outstanding. To the point now where I think we probably need to ask Destination Westland to consider their budget. We're actually performing well ahead of that. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this business is going. And I think it's a lot to do with the long-term planning and also the consistency for the Chief Executive has had over that business now for a few years. Cool, thank you. Next slide.
So Chris Ray, just giving you an update on Westroads. So revenue down there by 4 million, which was in line with previous year's revenue. A gross profit 3.3, also down 800k in budget, but it's up 500k from last year. Reason it's down is due to the COVID lockdown, which we had discussed. Also that Canterbury was still finishing off that low margin work. So they've still got a little bit of that left, but they are moving into the higher margin work as we speak in this next calendar year, second half of the calendar year, sorry. Also the aggregate and crushing plant in Grangemouth, that's had a bit of high maintenance costs there and low productivity. That's had a leadership change and is looking to return to profitability in the second part of the year as well. So that's good. Next slide, thanks, Di. As a result of that, we've finished up this with 145k profit compared to the budget, or what we lost last year of 892. Obviously, it's down on budget, but given the circumstances that they're working in with COVID and whatnot, I don't think that's looking too bad. Thanks, Di.
So, through the chair, just any questions that anyone has? Jai, you can probably take down that screen now, thanks.
Latham, Councillor Martin.
Thanks, David, and thanks, the Western Holdings Board. Thanks for the update. I'm just kind of blends into the next agenda item, but have you done any forecasting based on the last slide as to the impacts of the LGFA on the bottom line for this financial year?
Not entirely. Obviously, we've done budgets, or the two trading companies have done budgets for their SOIs, so we have got those figures. The LGFA, I've given the numbers based on today's situation, but obviously interest rates are rising, so there's a little bit of an unknown there. except to say that regardless, the borrowing from the LGFA, the interest rate is so much lower than we can get through banks that it will absolutely improve the current situation. So, you know, there will always be a higher profit because the interest rates will be lower. However, it may not be higher than what we are today because interest rates are also rising. So it is kind of a bit fluid. Obviously, we talk about that LGFA more in the next paper.
What's the situation with Westroads going in for next year, Joanne?
In what respect? So they are looking, you know, they're looking to return to a profit, which will increase over each of the next 3 years.
So how's the work pipeline looking?
Yeah, I understand it's looking good. You've got
the work pipeline's looking good, and the margins are looking better over in Christchurch. But the rescaling that they have done is obviously, as you can see, they've returned to a profit, and that's paying off. So it's looking a little bit rosier heading forward.
Thank you. Councillors, Councillor Hartshorn?
Yeah, just wondering what's the work number, employee numbers of Westroads? Is it you had quite a few leave, and has that come back yet, or is it?
So look, just anecdotally, they have had some issues being able to recruit good people. You know, I think that's a fairly standard position throughout New Zealand, really. And that was in the last conversation with Peter, which was before Christmas. So we haven't been told that that's changed. So, you know, in some respects, they needed the staffing numbers to be lower while there was some financial stress. But with it growing, they'll obviously have to be able to recruit and fill those positions. And we haven't heard that anything's changed since before Christmas.
Okay.
Any more questions or issues, councillors? Okay, there's not. Joanne, I think we might just morph into the next issue.
Yeah.
And we'll receive your 6 monthly update in the motion dealing with the funding application. So would you just like to proceed with that matter, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have talked for quite some time about funding the 2 trading organisations through the Local Government Funding Authority. And the only reason that we would look at doing that is simply because the interest rates are so much lower than market rates. And what I've done is given you some calculations based on today, because that's all we know. And it's comparing the current interest that's paid by the organisations with what we would be paying if we were borrowing from LGFA today. So you'll see there's quite a saving in interest rates and interest payments, and that saving is pure profit. If you sit down and look at it as a trading business, it's profit that they could then reinvest in the business or pay down debt or pay as a dividend back to council. So, you know, that there isn't any downside particularly from reducing interest rates. What we've put in there is the current debt from both the combined trading entities, which is 8.1 million, but also a desire from Destination Westland to borrow an extra 9.5 over time. Now, that will be a couple of million for the current housing developments, but it's also allowing for some future development opportunities, which would have to be approved by council independently. So this is just the funding side to enable us to go to the LGFA and get approval for a sum, which would be drawn down as required as the current debt matures or as new projects are approved by council. So while it sounds a very scary number, the reality is right now it's only 8.1 million that would be drawn down, and then that would increase over time as future development opportunities are approved. I want to make that very clear for you.
Okay.
So really, I think everything else is there. We looked at an option of council borrowing the money directly from LGFA and then on loaning it to Westland Holdings, who would then loan it to the 2 trading organisations. We've had some more information that's come out against it, because now, sorry, I'll have to, unless Leslie's online and can clarify it, I'll just have to have a quick look at it, because it's just come through literally this morning.
Yeah, so
So
there
Leslie there?
yeah, I'm here.
Great.
Yeah, I spoke with our Treasury advisors, or it was yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, and I mentioned that the CCO was looking to borrow from the LGFA, which councils are doing now. And they did mention that councils are starting to move away from the CCOs are starting to move away from the councils loaning on their behalf and moving more into going directly with LGFA. And as this is happening, they're getting leaner with their processes, and it's not costing as much money. But in that conversation, apparently, if we borrow it and then on-lend it, we have to have a commercial agreement with the CCO, and that will cost money. And we also have to have what is a shadow profile assessment against us and the CCO, which basically looks at the Standard & Poor ratings. And any difference between the two, the council and the CCO, is considered a notch, and it's dependent. You could be an AA and a BB, and how many notches in between. You charge 5 basis points per notch. So if there's 3 notches, then you'd increase the rate by 15 basis points, and that would be a revenue to council because it's based on a commercial agreement. Well, obviously, if that happens, that means that holdings are not getting as much of the profit and benefit from the lower lending from LGFA than they would have done if they go directly. Plus, we do have to report quite a bit to the LGFA and the trustee and the registrar, and we also have to have an audit on the debenture trust deed every year. Now, if we have to do that, that's more costs that we will be passing on to Westland Holdings as well.
So we started, that's where we started. You know, the council would borrow the money and then on-loan it. But it seems probably, after further investigation, that the logical thing is to go direct. If Westland Holdings to go direct to the LGFA and borrow the funds directly and just keep council out of it. However, in doing that, we do need council's approval to seek this loan, so that's why we're here today, and that council will guarantee it. They also require the council to issue some unpaid capital to cover the amount of whatever we're borrowing. So again, that could be done in stages as we draw down, but just so long as you're aware of that. So really, any questions? Because it is a reasonably meaty issue.
Joanne, it seems it's a total no-brainer because of the differential in the lending rate. Why would we not take advantage of that? In fact, we'd be negligent if we didn't take advantage of that, it seems to me. I assume that our present loans are guaranteed, with present loan, your present loans are guaranteed by the council. Is that right?
No, I think, so the loans are taken by each of the trading organisations as separate entities, so no, council's not guaranteeing it.
Really? That seems extraordinary.
And neither is Westland Holdings.
Really? So
that's the only purely commercial loans between the bank and the trading organisations.
Okay, but normally banks require all sorts of guarantees.
You know, obviously they're assessing when they're loaning, you know, the financial position of those companies before they loan the funds. Yeah.
So that's the only hitch here then is the fact that council is being hooked in under a guarantee.
Yeah. Yes, it is. You're quite right. The idea is still that council will report reasonably regularly to council, that we will report to council and let you know how those figures are looking, so that, and we'd certainly make you aware if there was any unforeseen circumstances that arose that put those organisations at risk. You know, so as we did with Destination Westland at the beginning of COVID, you know, we would let you know and keep you informed.
Are there any other risks you see falling to council because of this proposal?
Doing it directly, I don't think affects council's ability to borrow, which was another concern if we did it through council. So I think we're avoiding that concern. The biggest risk to council, obviously, is if one of the companies fails. But these companies already have debt. So, you know, they all have equity that could be used to repay that debt in a dire financial situation. So nothing's really changing except the council's in the middle of it.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just a question on if this is approved, what the implementation timeline is. So
I think it's fairly significant, Councillor Martin, and it's also quite costly. So we have initially engaged with a legal firm to get through that. We've talked to the Invercargill City Holdings, who are another CCO that's borrowed directly rather than through council. They were one of the first, and so it took them about 12 months. I sort of talking with LGFA, I'm thinking maybe 6 months, and any costs that are incurred by Westland Holdings would have to be on charge to the CCOs at the ratio of their lending. So, you know, obviously we don't have any money to just pop up and spend on legal. So, yeah, look, I don't think there's any avoiding the fact that it would be 6 months at least.
And
Any other quick? Sorry, Lothar.
So sorry. So 6 months, sort of. So yeah, 6 months from March.
Yep.
Yep. No, it's just good to get a timeline because, like, lots of things we resolve them and then we just assume they're done, and we might assume they're done the next day or the next year, or we're about to consider another matter that, you know, is case in point for that. So. You know, it's really helpful, I think, to know that, and sort of then we can at our end go, right, 6 months, 3 months, let's check in, is everything tracking well? And then in your next 6 monthly update, it's like, yay, we've joined the LGFA.
Yeah, and look, we can certainly keep you updated as we bring other items forward on the progress with that, or we could do a formal item in 3 months' time and just you know, to give you some advice about where it is and if we're having any problems.
Yeah, it's great. Well done.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, Paul.
Okay, well, I don't like the idea of writing a blank cheque. Basically, for this, it's I don't think that's a good practice at all, and I don't like the idea of the extra $9.7 million that's flagged as well for Destination Westland for some dream. I don't know what it is. The $2 million we do know about is for the pensioner housing, and that's all ka pai. But the rest of it, no idea what it is. I just don't think. I really struggle with giving a blank cheque to draw down as you like, and I also when we talked about this last time, it was about the council borrowing on behalf of the CCOs, but now this is a step removed, and all the risk comes. The council's taken all the risk. I just don't like it. I mean, this is not monopoly. This is real money for ratepayers, and at the end of the day.
Sri, can I just respond to that, Mr. Chair? Two things. First of all, had council borrowed and then loaned it on, council was also taking a risk, so probably a greater risk because they were directly responsible for repayment of that loan, whereas you know, as a guarantor, they're only responsible if there's a failure. And in terms of the amount being drawn down, so we have to go through a reasonably extensive process to borrow money from the LGFA, including legal. It'll be reasonably costly and reasonably time-consuming. Now, my understanding is that we have to nominate a maximum figure to do that. So we get approval of the LGFA, but it'll only be drawn down when current debt matures or when council has approved a project. So under our agreement, neither the trading organisations nor Westland Holdings can undertake any project work that costs more than $500,000 without council's approval. So they are nominal sums that Destination Westland has looked at for the next 5 years or past to do more development. So the airport, for example, is a complete reset of the runway. It's a PC sum, we don't have quotes, but we are required to come back to council for approval for any project over $500,000. So none of those projects have had approval, and they will all have to come back.
So in other words, we have, Joanne, a effectively right of veto on the extent to which this loan is drawn down.
Absolutely, yes.
That satisfy you, Paul?
No, not particularly. But
well, the control's still in the hands of council, effectively.
Yes, I understand that. The onus is on the holdings to come back to us. I understand that, but essentially we're still being asked to give them a blank check.
Well, that's not fair, surely. If it's not a blank check, if we have the right of control and veto, how's it a blank check in those circumstances?
We have a right over the future borrowing, where they have to come back over $500,000. Yes.
Councillor Hartshorn.
Yeah, so this has a limit of, you're talking 9.1 million, is that correct?
So, sorry, what it is now is that the total debt between the two CCOs is 9.1 million. So as soon as we got approval to borrow the money, we would draw as much of that down as we could as the current borrowings mature. So obviously the CCOs borrow for 12 months or 24 months. As they mature, we would replace the bank borrowing with LGFA borrowing. So the current debt is 9.1 million. What we're suggesting is that we seek approval from LGFA up to 17 million, which would allow future borrowing once individual projects have been approved by council. So it won't be borrowed. As soon as we borrow it, we have to start paying interest on it. So we're not going to borrow it if we've got nowhere to spend it. We can't spend it without getting approval from council. So it is kind of a circular process.
So you're saying council has to approve it over 500,000?
Yes, they do. Yes.
But it doesn't say whether if you do 490 every month, who has to approve it?
Well, we couldn't break that up if it was a project and we just went and borrowed 490,000 every month. The project is going to be worth 1 million or 2 million or 3 million or 5 million. So the project has to come. So it's not about the expenditure with the LGFA or the borrowings from LGFA. It's about council's agreement with Westland Holdings. We have to bring back any project worth 500,000.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, say, Westroads as a contractor go out and buy $400,000 this month and 300,000 the next month or a couple of months later, and then they get short of work or things change. You know, it's right to say over 500,000, but there must be some better control on it than that.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, and I guess we need to tweak that to say that we would come back to council for any borrowing over 500,000 within a 12-month period or something like that. I think that's probably a better way of giving you assurance that it's not being borrowed frivolously.
Yeah, because believe me, it only takes a day to buy something.
Yeah. I think it takes longer than that to get the money off the LGFA, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just my concern.
Yep.
Councillor,
Yep.
Councillor Hart. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks. I support the motion because it is a substantial savings in interest rates, but I just with the way the current loan structures are with DW and Westland Holdings, I presume they will be only drawn down as they are as they expire. So do we have sort of a timeline of the loans when the loans expire?
Sorry, I did get that, but I didn't include it in the report, so I can't just put my hands on it now. But I think the maximum is 24 months. So, you know, they're borrowing for periods of 12 months and 24 months generally. I have seen it. Sorry, I just can't recall.
So, I mean, it could take that long anyway to get this funding approved through anyway.
You're absolutely right. And in the meantime, if we're certain that we're going down this road and they have loans that are rolling over, we'll get them to roll them over for shorter terms rather than longer terms, so that they can take advantage of the lower interest as soon as possible.
Sure. Yep. Great.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you. Yeah, similar questions to what Ian was bringing up just before about lots of $400,000 segments. So I'd like to see that just tidied up a wee bit. And why 17.6 million, I think it was? Why that exact amount?
So that's in your paper. So the current debt between the two companies is 8.1 million, and what Destination Westland has looked at is 4.5 million for future property or pensioner housing development. So these are just PC sums. You know, there's no project. Well, there's the one project, but you know, there's not a project. It's just a desire or an estimate of what they think it's going to cost. And they've looked at 5 million for the airport, which is a complete reseal of the runway. Whether or not that takes place, whether we can get infrastructure fund money for that in the future or get someone else to pay for it, obviously we'll keep trying, because while this is low interest, it still is debt and it still is interest. And if we get someone else to pay for it, that's fantastic. We'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we may never need 17 million.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to have their say? Okay, do you have someone prepared to move the motion that's set out in the agenda? Councillor Cogan, you're prepared to move that motion? And are you happy that the first part, 1.1, includes that that the report be received and the 6 monthly update from Westland Holdings as well? Happy for that to be included in there?
Yeah,
Councillor
happy for that to be included. Yep.
Thank you. Do we have someone willing to second the motion? Councillor Hart. Thank you, Councillor Hart. Those in favour, please put your hands up. Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you, Joanne, and to Chris, appreciate you coming along and participating in the meeting, and for the information you've given to us and the update. Thank you very much. And I think you
just through your chair.
Yes.
About 125 employed out of Westroads.
125. Yeah. Thank you. Much appreciated.
No problem.
Thank you, Chris. All right. You're free now to leave the meeting.
Thank you.
And I think we'll take an adjournment of our meeting, councillors, until 3:30, when we'll head into the public excluded portion of the meeting. So we'll see everyone here on the dot at 3:30.
Chair, I think you need to move to go out of committee, out of public.
I move accordingly. Someone like to second that, please? Councillor Martin. All those in favour, raise their mitts. Thank you. All right, see you at 3:30, guys and girls.